You are staring at a screen, or perhaps a pile of paperwork, or a sink full of dishes. You know exactly what you need to do. You know the consequences of not doing it. You have the time, the resources, and the ability to complete the task. Yet, you find yourself doing literally anything else. You might be reorganizing your bookshelf by color. You might be scrolling through social media until your thumb hurts. You might simply be staring at the wall, paralyzed by a strange, heavy inertia. Afterwards, the guilt sets in. You tell yourself that you are lazy. You tell yourself that you lack discipline or willpower. You promise that tomorrow will be different. But tomorrow comes, and the cycle repeats. It is a suffocating loop that millions of adults find themselves trapped in every single day. But here's the truth that might change how you view your own mind. You are not procrastinating because you are lazy. You are not procrastinating because you are bad at time management. You are procrastinating because the task in front of you makes you feel something you do not want to feel. To understand why we sabotage our own progress, we have to look at what procrastination actually is. It is not a productivity problem, it is an emotional regulation problem. When you look at that daunting report or that difficult conversation you need to have, your brain does not just see a task, it sees a threat. It anticipates negative emotions. You might fear that you are not smart enough to do it well, which makes you feel stupid. You might resent the task because it is monotonous, which makes you feel bored and trapped. You might worry about the outcome, which makes you feel scared. These feelings, incompetence, boredom, anxiety, resentment, are painful. Your brain is wired to protect you from pain. So when it detects these negative emotions attached to a task, it immediately searches for an escape route. It looks for a way to repair your mood instantly. This is why you pick up your phone or go to the refrigerator. You are not looking for entertainment or food. You are looking for a dopamine hit to numb the discomfort of the task. This internal conflict can be explained by looking at the architecture of your brain. There is a constant tug-of-war happening inside your skull between two very different systems. On one side, you have the prefrontal cortex. This is the adult part of your brain. It is responsible for long-term planning, logic, and understanding consequences. It knows that finishing the project now means you can relax this weekend. On the other side, you have the limbic system. This is the ancient, emotional part of your brain. It is concerned only with immediate survival and immediate pleasure. It does not care about your weekend, it cares about how you feel right now. When a task makes you anxious, the limbic system views that anxiety as a predator. It screams at you to run away. Because the limbic system is faster and more powerful than the prefrontal cortex, it often wins. It hijacks the controls and steers you toward immediate relief. Procrastination is essentially your limbic system pulling the emergency brake to stop you from feeling bad. We can see this mechanism playing out in several distinct patterns in adult life. The first and perhaps most deceptive pattern is what we might call productive procrastination. This is when you avoid a high-stakes task by doing a low-stakes task that still feels like work. For example, instead of writing the difficult email that has been weighing on you for 3 days, you decide to deep clean the entire kitchen. You organize your desktop files. You water the plants. You feel busy, and you can tell yourself you are being productive. But deep down, you know it is a lie. You are doing these things specifically because they are safe. They are tasks where you know the outcome and they do not threaten your competence. You are using productivity as a shield to hide from the one thing that actually matters. The clean kitchen is just a monument to your avoidance. A second common pattern is the myth of the right mood. Many of us operate under the false belief that we need to feel inspired or motivated before we can act. We say things like, "I'm just not in the headspace for this right now," or "I'll do it when I feel more energetic." We treat motivation as a prerequisite for action. The problem is that for difficult or boring tasks, the right mood will never arrive. Your brain will never naturally want to do something that it perceives as a threat. By waiting for motivation, you are giving your limbic system veto power over your life. You are waiting for the fear to go away before you move, but the fear only goes away once you have started moving. This creates a paralysis where you are constantly waiting for a lightning strike of energy that simply isn't coming. The third pattern is perhaps the most draining, the doom scrolling loop. This usually happens when the anxiety about a deadline becomes overwhelming. The task feels so big and scary that your system goes into a freeze response. To cope with this high level of cortisol, you turn to screens. You scroll through news, videos, or feeds, not because you are interested, but because you are trying to induce a trance state. You are numbing yourself. The screen provides a steady, predictable stream of small dopamine hits that keep the anxiety at bay. However, while you are scrolling, the clock is still ticking. The deadline is getting closer. This increases the danger, which increases the anxiety, which increases your need to scroll. It is a self-reinforcing spiral of stress that leaves you exhausted before you have even typed a single word. It is crucial to recognize that this behavior is not a character defect. It is a biological coping mechanism that has gone into overdrive. You are not a broken person. You are a person who has learned to use avoidance as a painkiller. And like any painkiller, it works in the short term, but creates dependency and side effects in the long term. The relief you feel when you decide to put something off is real. It is an immediate drop in stress. That feeling of relief rewards the brain. It teaches your limbic system that avoidance equals safety. The next time you face a hard task, the urge to avoid will be even stronger because the behavior has been reinforced. You are effectively training yourself to be terrified of effort. Breaking this cycle requires a shift in strategy. You cannot simply try harder or brute force your way through biology. You need tools that work with your brain's safety mechanisms rather than against them. One of the most effective methods is the 5-minute start rule. The mistake most of us make is focusing on the finish line. When you look at a massive project, your brain calculates the energy required and says, "We can't survive that." It feels like standing at the bottom of a mountain. The 5-minute start changes the deal. You do not commit to finishing the project. You do not even commit to doing a good job. You simply commit to working on it for 5 minutes. That is it. This technique works because it lowers the threat level. Your limbic system does not panic over 5 minutes of work. It feels manageable. It feels safe. You tell yourself, "I can do anything for 5 minutes, and if I hate it, I can stop." But a fascinating psychological phenomenon usually occurs once you start. The anticipation of the task is almost always worse than the task itself. Once you cross the threshold of starting, the anxiety dissipates. You realize it is not as painful as you imagined. Often, the momentum carries you far past the 5-minute mark. You are tricking your brain into realizing that the monster in the closet is just a pile of clothes. Another powerful tool is the practice of emotional labeling. Instead of fighting the urge to procrastinate, pause and investigate it. Ask yourself, what am I actually feeling right now? Be specific. Are you bored? Are you overwhelmed? Are you afraid of criticism? Acknowledge the emotion without judging it. You can say to yourself, "I am not lazy. I am just scared that this draft will be bad." This process is known as naming it to tame it. When you label an emotion, you move activity from the emotional center of the brain to the thinking center. You reduce the intensity of the fight or flight response. By admitting the fear, you strip it of its power to control you. You can then make a deal with the fear. I know I am scared of doing this imperfectly, but I am going to do a bad draft anyway. There is a prevalent myth that the only way to cure procrastination is to be stricter with yourself. We believe that if we just beat ourselves up enough, we will finally get into gear. We call ourselves names, we set rigid punishments, and we engage in harsh negative self-talk. But psychological research suggests the exact opposite is true. Procrastination is driven by negative emotions. When you criticize yourself, you are adding more negative emotions to the pile. You are adding guilt and shame to the anxiety you already feel. This makes the task even more emotionally expensive. It increases your desire to escape, which leads to more procrastination. This is why forgiveness is actually a functional productivity tool. Studies have shown that students who forgave themselves for procrastinating on a previous exam studied more effectively for the next one. By releasing the guilt, they remove the emotional baggage associated with studying. They reset the system. If you can look at your wasted time and say, "Okay, I had a hard time regulating my emotions yesterday, and that is human." You clear the slate. You reduce the stress for today. Self-compassion is not letting yourself off the hook. It is unburdening yourself so you can actually move forward. Consider the narrative you have built around your own capabilities. If you have spent years procrastinating, you likely self-identify as someone who cannot be trusted to follow through. You might feel like a passenger in your own life, watching opportunities slip by because you cannot grab the wheel. But remember that neuroplasticity is real. Your brain can learn new patterns. Every time you notice the urge to run away and choose to stay for just 5 minutes, you are rewiring your neural pathways. You are teaching your limbic system that it is safe to be uncomfortable. You are building tolerance for the sensation of effort. The goal is not to become a robot who never feels resistance. The goal is to change your relationship with that resistance. It is to understand that the feeling of, "I don't want to do this," is not a stop sign. It is simply a sensation, like feeling cold or feeling hungry. It is data. You can feel the resistance, acknowledge the fear, and still move your hands. You can write the sentence while feeling scared. You can make the call while feeling bored. The action does not need the permission of the feeling. So, as you look at the task you have been avoiding today, try to see it differently. Do not look at it as a test of your worth. Look at it as a moment of emotional repair that went wrong. Ask yourself, what am I trying to avoid feeling? Once you find the answer, offer yourself a small amount of grace. Lower the bar until it is so low you cannot fail. Step over it, and then see what happens next. You might find that the heavy door you have been terrified to open was actually unlocked the whole time.